The 2018 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs are about to start this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and everyone's speculating, everyone's filling out their brackets like it's March Madness or something. Everyone wants to know who's the favorite to win the championship, who's going to be eliminated early, what surprises will we see, and in today's episode I'm going to give you round by round all of my playoff predictions, and it's going to be fun, so let's get to it. How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove predictions episode. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm going to go round by round and give you all of my predictions. Who's going to be eliminated, when are they going to be eliminated, who's going to make it to the Final Four at Homestead, and who will be the champion. I'm going to go through all that, give you guys as many stats and thoughts and opinions as I can. So let's just jump right in. We might as well start with who's in the chase field, the 16 drivers who made it in. You can see them all right up there. Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr. come into the playoffs with a large points cushion due to all the wins and all the stage wins that they had this season, so they've collected a lot of playoff points. Going into this first race, actually, Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch are both 47 points above the cut line in the first round. Truex is 32 points ahead, then Keselowski 16. So the top three there, the big three this season, have a pretty big points cushion. And remember, those points carry over every single round. So that's a pretty big cushion that all three of those guys are going to have going into every single round in these playoffs. That's a big bonus they get for doing so well in the regular season. Now, the first round of this year's playoffs is a little different than the last few years. We're starting out at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, which is a playoff race for the first time this year. We're then going to Richmond, which used to be the final regular season race. It's now in the playoffs. And then the big wild card this round, we go to the Charlotte Roval for the third race. This is a track that we've never actually, or configuration at least, that we've never seen any NASCAR series race at. There's been some testing. We really have no idea who's going to be good, who's going to be bad. It's an interesting track. It's part road course, part oval. We don't know what to expect, so that's probably the biggest wild card in these playoffs. And it's in the first round, so that could shake things up tremendously. But then again, like I said, that's why it's super important that Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick and Truex and Bowyer and Keselowski have a lot of bonus points because they might need them in this first round. Something crazy might happen. So without further ado, I'm going to give you my 12 drivers that will be moving on to the next round. And here they are: Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, Clint Bowyer, Kurt Busch, Chase Elliott, Eric Jones, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, and in 12th, I have Jimmie Johnson making it through round one. And I know right off the bat this goes against what I said in my episode earlier this week when I called Jimmie Johnson a first round exit. Maybe that makes me a hypocrite, but I went back and looked at some stats and I thought about it a little bit more and I realized these first three tracks might be okay for Johnson, and with that Charlotte Roval race mixed in there, anything can happen. So if we look at this again, the four drivers I'm eliminating early are Ryan Blaney, which might be surprising, Aric Almirola, which might also be a little surprising, and then Alex Bowman and Austin Dillon, which may be a little bit more expected. I did a lot of research looking at stats for this video. I'll start with Austin Dillon. He only has 5 bonus points from that one win at Daytona, so he doesn't have a lot of points coming into this. He finished 13th at Vegas and 15th at Richmond earlier this year. Both decent runs for him, but typically he has not been very good this year. He's really not a playoff driver. He was outside the top 20 in points before that win, so the win's the only reason he's in the playoffs. He's going to be out in round one. Alex Bowman was 16th at Vegas earlier this year and 18th at Richmond, which are both actually kind of below average for what we've seen from Bowman this year. Couple that with the fact that he doesn't have that much momentum coming into this race. I mean, he just wrecked at Indianapolis. Granted, it wasn't really his fault, but he did wreck, so he doesn't have good momentum. He was 8th at Bristol a couple weeks ago, which is a little disappointing because that's one of his better tracks. 23rd at Darlington, and then, you know, the wreck at Indy. So Bowman does not have good momentum. That's why I have him being out first. Now, the other two you guys might refute me on. Aric Almirola started this year so strong in that Stewart-Haas car. You know, he was leading laps at some tracks. He does not have a win this year, and that's part of why I have him being eliminated early, because he doesn't have any, he has very few bonus points to his credit. But if you want to talk about drivers who do not have good momentum going into these playoffs, Almirola is towards the top of the list. His last 3 finishes: 31st at Bristol, 14th at Darlington, and 23rd at Indianapolis. Those just aren't good. So he doesn't have very much momentum. He finished 10th at Las Vegas earlier this year and 17th at Richmond, so neither of those are great numbers. He has a career average finish at Las Vegas of like 27th. I know, granted, he was on not as good of race teams for most of his career, but still, that's not a good sign. So I know he's kind of been a good story this year. You know, he goes to a good car with good equipment and actually showed this year that he's a capable and good driver, but I still think he's going to be out in the first round. It's, you know, it's a tough choice, but it's a choice I'm making. Ryan Blaney is the 4th driver that I'm eliminating in the first round, and this is a really tough pick. Because the first third of the year, I thought Ryan Blaney was one of the top young guns. He was running well, leading a ton of laps, was like third in laps led at one point, only behind Harvick and Busch. But I've been looking lately, Penske's been a little bit better. Brad Keselowski's won 2 races in a row, but Ryan Blaney continues to run around 10th to 15th. Doesn't have any wins this year, so very few bonus points to his name. He ran 5th at Las Vegas earlier this year, which is pretty good, but 22nd at Richmond is not very good. And this is an interesting stat that I found that kind of surprised me. It's that he only has 2 top 5s since April. Since April, we've had nearly 20 races and only 2 top 5s. He's fallen a little bit off a cliff a little bit, and I just think it's not going to get that much better for him going into this next round, especially with, with Richmond, which he didn't run well at earlier this year, and of course the Charlotte Roval, which is going to be tough on everybody, but I think young guys might even have it a little tougher. Blaney, I just don't see it happening. Sorry, guys. Now, before you all leave your comments about me putting Jimmie Johnson through to round 2, I want to look at some of his stats because, compared to the guys I just looked at, the 4 that I'm eliminating, Johnson's stats at these 3 tracks in this round and recently are not that bad. He finished 12th at Las Vegas, but that was the 3rd race of the year. Back then, Hendrick Motorsports was not as good as they are now. And then he was 6th at Richmond, which is one of his better races, better finishes of the season. And like I just said, we all mostly agree that Hendrick Motorsports is a little bit better than they were at the start of the year, especially that 9 car with Chase Elliott. He's been way better. Jimmie Johnson had a top 10 run at Bristol. I know he was 16th at Indianapolis, which is a little disappointing, but I think they can get it done. I know he doesn't have any bonus points to his credit right now, or very few. I don't think he has any, but I just think that somehow he will find a way. So there's my top 12. Told you guys this would be a jam-packed episode. Hopefully you're enjoying following along at home, but let's move on to my round of 8 picks. Moving on to the round of 8, I have Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, Clint Bowyer, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, Martin Truex Jr., and Kurt Busch. And now this is where it gets so hard to make predictions. Because between these 12 drivers or so, there's really not that much difference between them statistically. The 4 drivers I have being eliminated are Denny Hamlin, Erik Jones, Jimmie Johnson, and Kyle Larson. This might shock some people too, because a lot of people have Kyle Larson, I think, moving on very deep into these playoffs, and honestly, I think this is where it ends for him. If we look at Kyle Larson's stats at round of 12 tracks this year, he was 10th at Dover, which is okay, but not great, 40th at Talladega, that's a track he's never had really any major success at, and then a 4th at Kansas isn't too bad, I'll give him that. But if I also look at last season for Kyle Larson, he had high hopes in the playoffs. He'd won 4 races, I think, last year, and this was the round that ultimately did him in. Kansas, while it's a 1.5 miles, and he's typically good at those 1.5 miles, it's not really one where you can run the high side. It's a 1 groove, freshly repaved track, and that just typically doesn't really fit his driving style as well as other guys. Plus, the big kicker for Kyle Larson, and for several guys here at the bottom of this list, is that he has very few bonus points going into each of these rounds because he didn't have any wins this year. That just puts you so far behind guys like Bowyer, Truex, Busch, Harvick, and all those guys. It puts you at a pretty big disadvantage. So yes, I think Kyle Larson gets eliminated in this round. I'm a Larson fan. I like Kyle Larson. I'll be glad if he moves on, but if he didn't do it last year when I thought he had one of the better cars, I just don't see him getting it done this year. Sorry, guys. Jimmie Johnson, I eliminate this round, and you just go back, see previous statement. He's not as good as he usually is. I think I'm being generous letting him move on to the round of 12. If he makes it past that, I'll be shocked. I really will. I will be. That team has really never been better than a 10th place car at any of these tracks this year. He's had so much great success in his career at Dover, but I don't think it's going to happen this year for him. I think Jimmie's eliminated this round. Erik Jones was a tough pick, I'm going to be honest, because he's been running super well lately. Erik Jones has 4 top 5s in his last 6 races. He finished 2nd at the Brickyard last week, and we barely even talked about him. He's been on fire, really since a couple weeks before he won at Daytona in July, really since June. Erik Jones and that 20 car have been outstanding. They've been the 2nd best Gibbs car to Kyle Busch, and at times, they've looked better than Kyle Busch. So knocking him out in this round is really a tough decision for me. He could surprise me and make it to the round of 8. It wouldn't really shock me that much, but if I look at his stats from earlier this season at some of these tracks, that's why I have him being eliminated. He finished 18th at Dover earlier this year, 39th at Talladega, he wrecked out of that one. 7th at Kansas isn't too bad, but again, he only has 5 bonus points to his name, so he's going to need to do better than 7th. If he's going to want to get up there with Kurt Busch and Clint Bowyer and Keselowski, And I'll be honest, he might do it, but I'm skeptical. I just am. He's got to be better than Kurt Busch, who's been quietly consistent all year. He's got to be better than Clint Bowyer, who has 2 wins to his credit. He's got to be better than a lot of these guys, and I just don't think he is. He's only in his 2nd year, guys. This is only his 2nd year in the Cup Series. I'll be impressed if he makes it past the round of 12. I really will be. And the last guy I have being eliminated in this round is Denny Hamlin. And I've discovered recently that people still really like to hate on Denny Hamlin. You know, I guess ever since Martinsville last year, the people still like to hate Hamlin. He's like a minor league Kyle Busch to a lot of these people. I don't have any ill will towards Denny Hamlin, but I just don't think he's good enough right now. This race at Indy this last week was one of the best races I'd seen that team put together, and they still couldn't come through and win it. So maybe that means they're in the right direction. Maybe they're going the right way right now, but I don't know. That team just has not been as good as they usually are. Denny Hamlin this year was 7th at Dover, 14th at Talladega, and 5th at Kansas, I believe. All pretty good numbers, but the problem is if you look at some of these guys that I have making it into the round of 8, they had better numbers. Joey Logano won at Talladega earlier this year, and the Penske cars always have good restrictor plate cars. Plus, he was 3rd at Kansas, and he's had success there too in his past. Kurt Busch earlier this year was 5th at Dover, 2nd at Talladega, and 8th at Kansas. So those are all really good numbers. Not to mention, Kurt Busch has finished in the top 10 in 8 straight races, so that team has been great. And Chase Elliott's finished in the top 10 in 6 of the last 7 races, and he's had good runs at most of these tracks. So, you know, the momentum is on all these other guys' sides, plus some of the finishes at these tracks earlier this year. Denny Hamlin, while he might be good, he doesn't have hardly any bonus points, again, because he has 0 wins. I don't think he gets it done. Sorry, guys. I think this is where his championship hopes fall short. So there you have it. Round of 8 drivers. That's we've cut the field in half now. So let's move on now to who makes it to the championship 4. This is why everyone clicked on this video. They wanted to know who the final 4 were going to be. You know, all the talk this year has been about the big 3. You know, who's going to make it to the championship 4? Is it a lock for these guys? I guess now you're going to hear my thoughts. My championship 4, after much deliberation, after a lot of research, a lot of gut feelings, looking myself in the mirror and really trying to figure out where my own head is at, after all of that, my final 4 is as follows. Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Clint Bowyer, and Chase Elliott. Ta-da! One name you'll notice that's missing is Martin Truex Jr. And I gotta tell you guys, this was probably the hardest decision of this entire, playoff prediction. Martin Truex Jr. has been to the Final 4 several times. He's obviously the defending champion. He's, got the third most amount of bonus points out of anyone this year. But when I looked at some of the stats and when I went with my gut, I had to put Chase Elliott, Clint Bowyer, and those guys ahead of him. So in other words, yes, the 4 drivers eliminated after the round of 8, Kurt Busch, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, and MTJ. Before you guys start calling me a Chase Elliott homer and that, I'm putting Chase Elliott in there just to make the fanboys happy, before you start saying that, let's look at Martin Truex Jr.'s finishes, and I want to compare them to these other guys, to Chase Elliott, to Clint Bowyer. Martin Truex Jr. this year was 4th at Martinsville, these are round of 8 tracks, was 4th at Martinsville, 37th at Texas when he blew a tire, and then 5th at Phoenix ISM Raceway. And honestly, when I look at the stats, he's got back-to-back top 5s at Martinsville, he's typically a top 10 contender at Texas, he's run pretty well, gotten some top 5s at ISM, he's been solid. I want to compare those stats now to Chase Elliott this year in those same races. Chase was 9th at Martinsville, 11th at Texas, and 3rd at ISM Raceway. Numbers are pretty similar. The race where Truex wrecked at Texas, he was running in around 5th place, I think, so he had probably a top 5, top 10 run going. Let's look at Clint Bowyer's stats, because those are the guys, I think nobody's really debating me on Harvick and Kyle Busch making it into the Final 4. I think most people agree with me there, so let's look at Bowyer's stats. He won the race at Martinsville earlier this year, was 9th at Texas, and then 6th at ISM. Some pretty good, consistent numbers. Now, I know a lot of you guys might be saying, oh, well, that doesn't tell the full story, that's just this year, but I'll be honest, I think this year's stats matter way more than any other year's stats. Jimmy Johnson's won tons of times at Dover in his career, but does anybody actually think he's going to win there this year in the playoffs? No, nobody does. So I think this year's stats tell more than anything else. That's why I'm focusing on them primarily. If I'm going to look at numbers like average finish for their careers, Chase Elliott's got a 7.4 average finish at Texas and a 6.8 at ISM, and he almost won the race. He should have won the race at Martinsville last year before Hamlin got to him. So these 3 tracks for Chase Elliott are 3 of his best tracks, at least in his relatively short Cup Series career so far, from what we've seen. Clint Bowyer's been really good there this year. He got the win at Martinsville, and he was good at Texas, good at ISM. Clint Bowyer's been all around good at a lot of these tracks, and Stewart Haas, I feel like, has the resources. Martin Truex Jr. has been consistent pretty much everywhere, although this has probably been one of his more inconsistent years in the last few, but he's still been very consistently good. However, there are a couple things that make me a little hesitant to put Martin Truex Jr. Into the Final 4. Firstly, they've had a few more mechanical issues this year. I mean, they blew that tire at Texas Motor Speedway unexpectedly, and that's a race in this round. And even this last weekend in Indianapolis, they had a brake issue that ultimately led to another tire issue. So I feel like they've made mistakes that guys like Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch haven't made quite as much, and I'm talking mechanical. I can name a couple others, but that's part of why I'm a little concerned with Truex. Chase Elliott's been pretty consistent this year. And especially since that win at Watkins Glen, or even a couple weeks before, Chase Elliott's been good. And I feel like he's riding that wave of momentum. He was great in this round last year. Should have made it to the Final Four in his second year. I just think this year he might get it done, honestly. And Clint Boyer has 2 wins, which gives him a few more bonus points. So he's right there. Another thing that honestly doesn't really help Martin Truex Jr. in my opinion is the whole fact that this is a lame duck season for him and for that whole race team. Ever since Furniture Row Racing, was announced a couple weeks ago that they're going to be closing down at the end of this season, you get the impression that their head's not quite in it. I mean, I don't know that for sure. Obviously they might just be rallying around this and really working harder than ever to kind of go out as a champion. But I just tend to think with a little bit of turmoil behind the scenes, a lot of uncertainty for a lot of these crew guys as to where they're going to be working, where they're even going to be living next year. I just tend to think that maybe their heads aren't quite in it. I mean, we've seen how you can kind of be out of it and suddenly start struggling. Tony Stewart's head was not in it the last couple of years of racing. He had plenty of issues off the track, injuries, and he was not really that good the last couple of years of his career. Dale Earnhardt Jr. with the injuries and the concussions, his head wasn't in it either, and that's why we didn't see a typical Dale Jr. season in 2016-2017. There is a mental side to NASCAR, and right now it feels like, Martin Truex, Cole Pearn, and that whole race team, I mean, I can't blame them really, but I just maybe think that their heads aren't going to be quite prepared mentally to run with the top guys in the sport this year, this playoffs. It's a gut feeling. I don't really have I mean, when I look at the stats like I just did, they're all pretty equal, but I feel like the thing that's going to tip me in favor of Boyer and Chase Elliott is the fact that Furniture Row and Truex and all these guys are going to have a lot of heavy issues going on behind the scenes. So maybe it's lame to use a behind the scenes reason as why their on-track performance won't be good, but it's what I'm going to do, because, those are my final 4 you see up there. I haven't really talked about Keselowski, Kurt Busch, or Joey Logano. Brad Keselowski's finished outside the top 10, I think, in all 3 of these tracks this year for various reasons. I know they've been better lately, but I'm skeptical. These are all okay tracks for Joey Logano, but he's not exceptionally good at any one of them, so I'm going to kind of put him down a little bit there. Kurt Busch has been really good at Texas as of late. However, his average finish at Martinsville is no bueno, and his ISM racer results are iffy. Like I said, nobody's going to argue with me on Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick. Kyle Busch won at Texas earlier this year. Kevin Harvick won at Phoenix or ISM, and Kevin Harvick's won like 9 times at ISM in his career. He basically owns that place. Plus, with all the bonus points, I think they're going to breeze their way into the Final Four. So this has been a long enough episode as it is. Throwing a lot of information, throwing a lot of stats, throwing a lot of predictions your way. But allow me to make one more, because we still have to crown a series champion. Looking at that Final Four right there of Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott, Clint Boyer, Kyle Busch, I don't know how you guys are going to react to this, but if you ask me, the 2018 NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series champion is going to be none other than the man himself, Kyle Busch. I know. Let the anger, let the disappointment and hatred, let it come to me, let it swirl around my head. I can take it. But Kyle Busch is indeed my pick to win his 2nd career championship this year. He finished 2nd at Homestead to Martin Truex last year. He's consistently been one of the top 2 guys all year. A little concerning that he hasn't had that great a car at Indy this last weekend, or even Darlington. He's been around a 5th to 8th place car. A little bit concerning, but I tend to think with the resources JGR has, they're going to turn it on. They have the bonus points, so they're going to make it to Homestead easily, I think. I just tend to think when it comes down to one-on-one, you're going to have 2 of the most I don't want to say polarizing, but I think Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch are going to be the 2 guys to decide this championship. No offense to Chase Elliott, Clint Boyer. I think they'll be in the top 10, maybe top 5. They'll lurk there and maybe be able to take advantage of something like what happened in 2016 happens. But at the end of the day, it's going to be Kevin Harvick versus Kyle Busch. Kevin Harvick won the title in 2014. Kyle Busch won the title in 2015. And they both were in the Final Four last year. Kyle Busch had a better race car and actually had a better race than Harvick last year. So if we're going to go by recency, Kyle Busch has been better. Kyle Busch's last 3 finishes at Homestead have been 2nd last year, then 6th, and then 1st. Kevin Harvick was 4th last year, then 3rd, then 2nd, and then he actually won the year before that. So Kevin Harvick's stats are actually a little bit better at Homestead than Kyle Busch's. But I'm going to go with recency. Kyle Busch had a better car last year. He has won here more recently than Harvick. 2015 for Kyle Busch, 2014 for Kevin. So I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm going to go with recency here. I think Kyle Busch will get it done in the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. That's going to be your champion, if you ask me. This has been the year of the big 3. And I know, the last few weeks we've seen Brad Keselowski, Kurt Busch, a few other guys start to kind of show up, like Chase Elliott, Eric Jones. We've had some other guys start to win, but at the end of the day, it's been the big 3's year. Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch have won more than half the races this year combined. It's going to come down to the 2 of them, and I just think Kyle Busch is going to get the upper hand, honestly. I'm on the record saying that I think Kyle Busch is the most talented driver in NASCAR right now. I would probably argue Kevin Harvick is second or third, so it's not a big difference. But Kyle Busch, when he's on, he's very tough to beat. He's scary, honestly. He's probably the scariest guy out there. If I want to analyze the two a little more closely, you know, Kyle Busch has a much better pit crew than Kevin Harvick, so, you know, if it comes down to that, my bet would be on the 18 team. Crew chief-wise, you have Adam Stevens versus Rodney Childers. I think they're pretty equal. They both had a lot of success. Equipment, I mean, you got the king of the Toyota teams versus the best driver at the best Ford team this year, so it's still pretty head-to-head, pretty equal. So at the end of the day, we're looking at pit crew and we're looking at driver talent, and I think Kyle Busch has the slight edge on both of those categories. You know, feel free to hate on me all you want, but that's just how I feel, and I think that's going to be how it ends up. So there's my predictions. There it is right there, my full-on 2018 NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series playoffs grid, filled out from start to finish. Yeah. Let me know what you guys think, because this was a long episode, threw a lot of information out there. I'll be curious to hear what you guys think. Give me some of your predictions, who your Final Fours will be, because you can see mine right there. It's been engraved on the internet for all to see, so no going back now. Anyway, yeah, that about does it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. I do videos like this every single week, multiple videos like this every single week, talking about all things NASCAR, and now that the playoffs are here, we're gonna have a lot of interesting things to talk about every week, so I'm excited. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, links to those down below. You can also become a sponsor of the show and help support me directly, like these fine people, Michael Harrison and Kyle Hill. You can be like these amazing Patreon sponsors if you check out the top link down below. Really means a lot to me. If you enjoy these videos at all, please just consider giving $1 a month. That means a lot to me. That really helps me move this show forward, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. Thanks again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and I'll see you again after this race at Las Vegas. Playoffs officially start now. This is where things get real. Very real. So let's do it. See you guys.